The only worry I have about this cake is what's in it. So let's see how I made this delicious carrot cake. We will start with the carrot. For this cake you will need a food grater or a cheese grater. What you have to do is chop both ends of the carrot to make it easier to grate. For this recipe you will need 4 to 6 medium carrots. Be careful not to chop your finger toward the end of the carrot. You don't want blood in your recipe. To avoid chopping your finger, once you reach the end of the carrot, cut it into small pieces and add it to the rest of the grated carrot. Having those slightly large pieces of carrot will not affect the recipe, so don't worry about it. Saving your finger is much more important. Once all the carrot is grated, we can work on the dry ingredients. You will need 2 cups of all-purpose flour, which is about 300 grams, 2 teaspoons of baking soda, half a teaspoon of salt, and 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. Whisk all those ingredients together. Then set aside. Get another clean bowl for the wet ingredient. Add in 1 cup of brown sugar, which is roughly about 180 grams, 1 cup of granulated sugar, which is about 200 grams, then you will need to add neutral oil like sunflower oil or canola oil, about a cup, which is roughly 300 mils. Whisk all those ingredients together. Once they become heavy, add in the eggs. For this recipe you will need 4 eggs. Add 2 at a time. Whisk them and then add the other half. Now it's time for whatever you call a dash of vanilla. Whisk that in. It's very important that your mixture is runny. If it's not and it's still heavy, you might need to add 1 more egg. Now is the time to get rid of the whisk. And bring in the rubber spatula. Now it's time to incorporate the wet with the dry ingredients. Add them little by little. Mix it in. Once all the flour is incorporated and absorbed, you can add more flour. Continue adding flour until the mixture is thickened and looks something like this. Now you can add in your grated carrots. Mix them in. That does seem like a lot of carrots, but don't worry. It will all get absorbed very quickly once you mix it in. Here comes the part that I was worried about. Adding chopped pecan and raisins. I was so worried about adding those two ingredients. I thought it might not work with the cake, but as I said before, it turned out delicious, and it works with this recipe. If you are not a fan of raisins or pecan, you can obviously remove those two ingredients. Once the mixing is done, we're ready to pour the batter into the mold. For the cake mold, you can choose any pan you have. I chose those two because it makes it easy to open and slide in the cake. You can use any round cake mold you have. Just make sure that you spray it with non-stick spray so it slides out easily, or you can use some wax paper to line it so you can easily pull out the cake. What you will need roughly is anything between 9-inch pan to about 12-inch pan to fit the cake. What we will do is we're gonna bake 2 cakes and we're gonna stack them on top of each other. So that's why you need 2 molds. Depending on the size of your oven, you can either bake them together or bake one at a time if you have a small oven. Make sure that you distribute the batter evenly between the 2 cake molds, so you should have equal sized cake. Into the oven it goes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is roughly about 180 degrees Celsius, for about half an hour, 30 minutes. My oven is small, so I baked the first one, and this is the result. Here's the second cake going in. This is the result of the second cake. Now that we have our cakes ready, it's time to turn our attention to the frosting. To make the frosting, we're gonna need some cream cheese, room temperature cream cheese, about a cup of icing sugar or powdered sugar, which is roughly about 140 grams, help thicken out the sauce, we're gonna add 2 teaspoons of cornstarch. Now is a good time to get the electric whisk out. Add in the milk and whisk using the electric whisker. For the milk, you will need about a quarter cup of whole fat milk, which is roughly about 100 milliliters. The milk, you might need less or more of it depending on how thick you want your frosting to be. If you like it really thick frosting, then you're gonna add little, maybe a few tablespoons of milk just to thin it out. But if you like it really runny, then you're gonna add more milk. You're probably gonna add the whole quarter cup. Now it's time to start layering your cake. For me it was easy, just open the lock, slide the ring out, and using the help of some straight spatula or icing spatula, loosen the cake and slide it onto the plate. What we're going to do now is ice the top layer of this cake. Cover it as much as you like. You can, if you like, fill up this middle layer so the icing will be falling from the side of the cake. For me personally, I just wanted a thin layer to be covered in the middle. That's why I have a thin layer. Then add in the top layer of the cake and do the same. Add the rest of the icing. We are still not ready to serve this cake. What you need to do is put it in the fridge for at least an hour. You want to serve this cake cold. After 1 hour, we're ready to serve. This cake will keep well in the fridge for up to 3 days. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them below. And if you like this video, please consider giving us a thumbs up, subscribing to the channel, and sharing the video with your sweet tooth friends.